Monroe Correctional Facility, Officer. 2024, you gotta put it out. You put it out.
Folks, welcome back to another episode of The Fallen Badge. Today we're going to look at the murder of Correctional Officer Jayme Biendl, Washington State Department of Corrections. Now, Officer Biendl, she was 34 years old. She had 8 years with the Department of Corrections there in the state of Washington. Now, she had 5 brothers and sisters. Near as I can tell, her folks were still alive. Now, she was just a few weeks shy of being 35 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Now, she worked at the Monroe Correctional Facility. That's in Monroe, Washington. Now, the suspect in this case, he was doing a life sentence for aggravated rape. He was a rapist. That seemed to be his claim to fame. And you know, you must have been really bad and have a long record to get a life sentence involving a rape. Because they don't give those out to just any run-of-the-mill crime. It's January 29th, 2011. Now, Officer Biendl, she was assigned to the chapel, and she was working that by herself. Now, according to the Teamsters, the union that represented the correctional officers, she had complained to the union, the shop steward, prison supervisors. She thought it was an issue for her to be assigned solo in the chapel, an area that's pretty well isolated. There's not a lot of cameras down there, and she's by herself. And oh, by the way, all she has is a set of keys and a radio. That should keep you warm at night, knowing that's your job and that's what you're given. Because it wouldn't matter if it's a man or a woman. You should not have one solitary officer assigned to an area like that where you're going to be around inmates. Now, it was known, or at least it should have been known, that the suspect said he didn't like women, and that he said he would have a problem if he had to follow orders or directions given by a woman. Now, this coming from a criminal who had once doused a woman in gasoline and set her on fire. Now, that's the kind of person we're dealing with here. So this convicted, spending the rest of his life in prison inmate who doesn't like women, he is somehow or another working in the chapel. Now, unfortunately, what happens is prison kind of lose track of where he's at, and they actually lose track of where Officer Biendl's at. Now, they did a head count at 9 p.m., which was standard, and they figured out that they were short an inmate. Now, they located him a few minutes later in the prison chapel's lobby. Now, he told the officers that located him that he was planning on escaping. Now, as of this particular time, they still don't know Officer Biendl is unaccounted for. Now, they're doing an equipment inventory, and they figure out they got a set of keys and a radio missing. So now they send officers to try to go find Officer Biendl. They say, okay, well, she was assigned to the chapel, so they go down there and they find her. Now, they start CPR. She's pronounced dead at the scene by paramedics a few minutes later. Now, according to the statement given by the suspect, he said that he snuck up behind the officer while she was securing the door to the chapel. Now, he said initially he was just going to hurt the officer. Then he decided, well, I'm just going to kill her. Now, evidently, the initial attack on the officer involves just the suspect getting control of her radio, because they fought over the radio. Now, he gets the radio away from her, and according to his statement, there's a gap of time in between the initial attack and then the actual homicide. Now, according to him, Officer Biendl tried to reason with him, reminded him that he had a wife. Now, according to him, his justification for killing the officer was that earlier in the day, she had said something that he considered disrespectful to his wife. Now, this is coming from a man that set a woman on fire. This is coming from a man who, in 1997, had kidnapped a real estate agent. He had gotten in contact with the agent, told her he wanted to look at a house, so she meets him there, pulls a gun on her, puts her in the trunk of his car. He later sexually assaults her, threatens to kill her, and by the way, her daughter who was with him. So he lets him go, and he gets arrested. That's why he's in prison for life. Now, according to his statement, when he decided he was going to finish her off, he used a cord from an amplifier. He had pulled it out of the back of the amplifier from the wall, and that's what he used to strangle her with. Now, he said she fought back best she could, kicked and bit, whole 9 yards. But when he finally got that cord around her neck, he choked her out and killed her. Now, this attack, when it initially happened, the first thing he did was he tore the radio microphone off of her uniform so she couldn't call for help, which is standard practice for suspects. So she never had a chance to get any help, and she had nothing to defend herself with. But she's dead, and the suspect killed her. Now, he went to trial. He was found guilty. Prosecutors asked for the death penalty. Suspect is given a sentence of death. And the state of Washington Supreme Court, of course, they overturned it. Said that was a terrible thing. So guess what? He gets another life sentence. Boy, that'll teach him. That'll keep him from doing anything wrong, won't it? You're already in there for life. So you get another life sentence. Only this time you took a life. Not just talking about kidnapping and rape. Now, a question I have, of course, is when I reviewed the state of Washington, the audit they did of that prison, because they sent staff from the state to come in there and review what had happened and the overall functionality of the prison. Now, the officers here, from what I saw, read, and understood, they don't have stab vests. They're not allowed to carry chemical agent. Certainly can't have tasers. Now, according to the prison, they're fully staffed. And on paper, it looks that way. Say they got 215 uniformed staff members. But anybody that's ever been a supervisor knows you can look at the numbers on a piece of paper, and that doesn't mean you're not understaffed. Now, they asked them about why the officer was assigned there by herself. Now, according to the staff, the administrators there at the prison, they had been assigning a single officer to the chapel for the past 15 years. They didn't see a problem with that. Of course, what that really means is they didn't care. Because the good supervisors should try to plan for the worst. Prepare. You ought to know that isolated post is dangerous, and to keep assigning one officer is ridiculous. And you give them no implements to defend themselves. And that's the problem with this. People who create the rules are generally not the ones whose life is on the line. Even this group sent in to review the prison, they talked about the use of a chemical agent, assigning it out so the officers can protect themselves. Well, of course, it's so typical of the government and administrators. They said, well, you get some chemical agent, but only give it to the supervisors. Don't let the officers have it. Oh, that's good. If you don't trust them, then why'd you hire them? Why in the world would you let a suspect who is a repeat offender in the category of sexual violence and who has stated that he will not take direction from a female, why would you allow him down there where she's at by herself, defenseless? I just wonder if you started charging administrators, supervisors with voluntary or involuntary manslaughter, if that wouldn't get people to maybe look closer at what's important. Because it seems to be in the category of law enforcement and corrections, the concern has more to do with the suspect, the inmate, the bad guy, than it does the officers that are trying to do their job. They'll bend over backwards to take care of a inmate or a suspect, but Lord, when it comes to officers, we seem to lose that focus, don't seem to care. Officer Jayme Biendl. End of watch, January 29th, 2011.